Also, Professor Sarah and Mokal have conducted extensive research on SMEs and insolvency, Professor Kenneth Ayot as well, Ed Morrison, and many others. And also, this guy from SMU actually conducted another study on SMEs in insolvency, saying that an ideal insolvency framework for SMEs should be based on at least 4 main policy recommendations. And these are my policy recommendations that I will be very happy maybe to discuss during the Q&A. The first one is to promote workouts for viable SMEs, because they might not even need the insolvency process because they only have a few creditors. So why not trying to save all the costs and all the problems associated with insolvency law when it might not be even needed? But in order to actively promote workouts, I think it's important for countries to look at what Insol International, what the World Bank have done, what the London approach is, what Singapore and the Association of Banks in Singapore have enacted, because all of these institutions have enacted some good practices for workouts. So that's why I think it's important for countries to try to promote workouts more actively. And the first step to do it is by enacting these good practices. Then also, if the workout fail, in my policy recommendations, I suggest that probably the SME might not even be viable, because one of the problems that we have with SMEs is that many of them are not viable. And conducting the viability test is also very costly, very difficult, very subjective. So why not letting the market decide whether the company should be reorganized, liquidated, or sold as a going concern? So that's why, instead of suggesting simplified organization procedure, simplified liquidation procedure, I suggest one single entry insolvency process based on a system of auctions. And then even the managers, even the shareholders can submit offers, and the offers can consist of cash offers or non-cash offers, including the organization plan. And of course, the procedure itself should also be simplified. So that's why companies, even if they are still viable, they can still survive during this process. Also, the discharge of debt for honest but unfortunate entrepreneurs is important, and also active policies to reduce the stigma, because we all say we need to reduce the stigma, but then we miss some specific recommendations to reduce the stigma. So that's why something suggested in the literature, for example, is changing the word bankrupt for debtor, separation between criminal law and insolvency law. In Chile, the entity in charge of managing insolvency procedure is called the Superintendent of Insolvency and Re-Entrepreneurship. So it's no longer insolvency, it's re-entrepreneurship, it's starting again. And then I think it's important to promote education and awareness, because I remember that when I first approached insolvency when I was in law school, it was kind of boring. And then I changed my mind because I was very lucky to have other professors, but the first one that they had was a terrible teacher. And I learned insolvency law as a bunch of procedural rules. It's kind of a special civil procedure, something like that. And I mean, my respect for those of you doing civil procedural litigation. So I truly admire those of you able to understand all the complexity of the process. But I didn't see the connection between insolvency law and the real economy. And then other professors that I met told me, hey, Aurelio, you know what? Insolvency law is actually an essential piece of our entrepreneurial system. And insolvency law can play an essential role for the promotion of entrepreneurship, access to finance, innovation, and economic growth. So, and I started to like insolvency law once we put more the emphasis on the ability of insolvency law to help the real economy, to support and feed families, to create jobs, or to preserve jobs at least. So that's why I think we need to rethink the way we speak about insolvency law, or we even teach insolvency law, because insolvency law is not only, even though it is, a bunch of rules dealing with financially distressed firms, but also a very important piece of the entire entrepreneurial system. So that's all. Thank you so much. My apologies because I exceeded the time that I was kindly allocated by Catherine. And now I